1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I love to sing about the moon and the June and the spring. I love to sing about a sky of blue and a T for two. Anything with a swing and two. And I love you and I love to sing.
Engage.
Hey guys, this is episode 13. It's Angel 1. And I'm actually filming in my friend Emily's dorm at Otterbein. I left my video camera at home last weekend, so she is letting me film on her phone. And hopefully I'll be able to get my video camera, if not this week, then by this weekend, and I'll be able to start doing videos regularly again, probably on Monday or Wednesday, because I really want to get back into this. Like I said I was at the beginning of January. I just somehow left it behind whenever I came back to school last weekend, so I haven't been able to film. But this episode is Angel 1, and it starts out when the Enterprise, they find the location of this freighter that had gone missing 7 years ago. And they're not sure if escape pods have been released from it, but they go to the closest planet, which is Angel 1, and they go down to talk to the leaders of the planet. So Riker takes an away team down with Deanna, Tasha, and Data, and when they go to talk to the leaders, they find out that this is a very matriarchal society. It's ruled by this council of maybe like a dozen women. And the women on this planet, they're kind of like the men on Earth, where they're stronger, taller than the women, and historically they've been the rulers of the planet. They've been the hunters, the soldiers, whereas men have kind of been second-class citizens. They're much shorter and weaker, and they're considered to be not as intelligent. So it's kind of like the way women were treated throughout human history in most societies. So when they go down to the planet, Deanna talks to the leader, and they say that they're wondering if there have been any refugees landing here 7 years ago. And it turns out that they have landed there, but the leader of the planet, she says that she doesn't know where they are because they're in hiding. They've been branded as outlaws. So the Enterprise, they run a scan, and they're able to find them. And Deanna, Tasha, and Data go over to their camp, and they find out that they're not the bloodthirsty outlaws that they've been thinking that they were expecting to find. They're actually just 4 men with their wives and their families who they were thrown out of like the civilization, and they've been being hunted just because they wanted to be equals in the society, and they didn't want to live as second-class citizens. But when Deanna tells them that they want to take them home to Earth, they refuse to go because they built new lives for themselves here on Angel 1. And they don't want to give up their families or their wives or what really is their home now, even if it means that they're going to have to be in hiding for the rest of their lives. So the away team, they go back to the main city, and they tell this to the leader. But in the meantime, the leader has found out that the wives of one of the men from the freighter is a woman on the council. So through her, they're able to track her, find the men, bring them in, and then they're preparing to execute them. But Riker, he gives this impassioned appeal, and he manages to convince the leader not to execute them, because he says that if she were to execute them, they would be elevated to the status of martyrs, and then she wouldn't be able to squash this rebellion. And he plants this idea that it's not a revolution, it's actually an evolution, and this is just the next step, because she had to expect that the men would eventually want to have equal rights, and even if they kill this small group, they wouldn't be able to stop everyone else in the coming years who's going to be wanting the exact same thing. So instead of killing them, she, throws them on this abandoned continent somewhere on their planet, where they're going to live out the rest of their lives, but it's going to be really hard, and they won't have time to lead any rebellions. So at the end, pretty much everything works out, so the away team goes back to the ship, and they fly off to the neutral zone, where they're going to fight some Romulans at the end of the episode, which isn't actually in the episode. That was just this pressing matter. Excuse me. This was this pressing matter that they had to take care of so that they could leave really fast and go fight the Romulans. One of the main things that I did like about this episode was just the few scenes with Geordi that they had, because while the away team is down on the planet, on the Enterprise, this really infectious virus starts spreading all of a sudden. And Beverly can't figure out how it's transmitted, how to cure it, but pretty much everyone gets sick. So at the end, it's just Geordi and Worf on the bridge, and Geordi actually has control of the Enterprise. And then eventually Worf gets sick, so it's just Geordi alone on the bridge, trying to run the Enterprise while everyone else is either sick or on the planet. And Geordi honestly wasn't in it that much, but I liked the few scenes that it had with him because it showed that he was getting a little bit more control. He actually had command of the bridge. And he's actually becoming less of a minor character. He's becoming less of a minor character. And he's actually moving towards being a more prominent character, and that at the beginning of the next season, he'll become the chief engineer. And he's not just this little ensign or lieutenant junior grade who's running the comm. He's actually one of the senior officers on the ship, and that he's in charge of engineering. And I think that's cool because I like Geordi, but in the beginning of the first few episodes, he didn't really have a distinct role on the ship. He was just sort of there. He was kind of like Wesley, in that Wesley's on the bridge. He doesn't really have a function. He's just there because he's one of the main characters. And the same thing was true with Geordi. But at the beginning of the next season, he has a real function on the ship. And I like this because it's showing him slowly getting more command responsibility. Picard is putting more trust in him. And he's getting more at home being in this, making these kind of command decisions and being in this sort of position. And I really like that about him. The thing that I didn't like about this episode is how Riker's character is portrayed, because he's moving towards just being a very flat character here. Because in the middle of the episode, he goes to visit the leader of society. He puts on this really weird outfit, because apparently that's what the men of their planet wear. I don't really understand it. But he goes to visit her, and they end up sleeping together. And then at the end, when he manages to convince her not to kill the 4 men from the freighter, it's kind of like because of this pseudo-relationship that they briefly had, that he has a little bit of influence over her, and why she kind of listens to him. So I guess that's their justification for having him sleep with her, but really there's no good reason, even regarding, even taking that into account, there's no reason for that to happen. And it annoys me because they're doing this really bad stuff to his character. It's more of just like a gimmick. Like, they didn't really know what should happen in this episode, how they were going to resolve it. So they throw in, oh, Riker's just gonna sleep with this woman and everything is gonna be great. And it really gets on my nerves because it's kind of the same thing that they do with Data, how they just make him say something really random, or they have him not understand something really simple just for a few cheap laughs, disregarding what they're actually doing to his character through this. And that's kind of what they did to Riker. Because he could be a really great character. He does have some really good episodes later in the season. Later in the series. I don't remember exactly if he has any in the actual season. But like the episode Second Chances, the episode Gambit, I absolutely love his character in those episodes. But episodes like these, it just kind of cheapens that. Because you have just something completely random like this happening, and then you kind of lose a little bit of respect for his character. And it gets on my nerves because it could have been it is a really good show, but it could have even started out a really fantastic show if the writers had just shown a little bit of restraint, and if they just, I don't want to say that they put a little bit more thought into it, because I know that these people were putting their entire lives into this work, and I really respect that. But if they just, like, maybe step back and try to think of how a real person would react in this circumstance, instead of just the character of William Riker, who hasn't really had that much character development in this episode. And it just kind of annoys me because it's like, this episode, not really much happens, and yet they feel the need to put that into it as a filler inside of a filler episode. And I understand that it's not a really groundbreaking episode, it's not fantastic, but in the case that it isn't that important of an episode, they didn't have to put something like that into it. That's really, I think that's what turned me off from this episode. It's just that it's not believable, and it's annoying, and it just really turns me off from the character. I really did like Tasha's character in this, because you all know that I love Tasha, and I guess I don't know if it's because she dies so early on and that we didn't really get to see any development.
Spoiler alert.
So, I've already mentioned that, but I'm assuming that most of the people who watch this have watched the series.
I would hope so.
But I'm sorry, Tasha dies in a few episodes in case you haven't seen it. But because she does leave the series, I'm kind of romanticizing the episodes that she is in it. But I really like this because she actually seems like the one person in this episode who's actually a real person, because she does show emotion a lot more than anyone else in the episode. She actually is kind of outraged at the way the society is structured, at the way there's such great gender inequalities, and at the fact that they're going to be executing these 4 basically innocent men. And while everyone else is, you can tell they're upset about it, but they're restraining themselves because they're Starfleet officers and because of the Prime Directive, she at least is kind of speaking out against it. And, you know, it's the whole thing, maybe that's not the most professional Starfleet thing to do, but it does make her a much more human character, and I think it's not that she's better developed than everyone else, I just think that she is more of a real person than Riker is in this episode. So I like that about her character. I think that's about all I had to say for this episode. I really, honestly, I do not like this episode. There's a lot of episodes in the first season that are okay, that I would go back and watch, but I wouldn't, like, intentionally, like, seek them out because they're great. But this episode, I honestly just do not like it. But there are going to be some better episodes coming up. And I just want to say that I know sometimes I get into this mode for an episode where it seems like I'm just hating on it and just bashing everything about it. And I do realize that. But it's not because I don't like the show. It's just because it could have been so much better if they would have fixed these tiny little things, or these little tiny plot points in each of these episodes that really just bring down the quality of the entire thing. So last weekend I was going through my closet and I found this binder and a few notebooks that I stuck up there whenever we moved over the summer. And I was looking through them and I found some of these poems that I had written like over the past 10 years or so. And what I didn't find was this Star Trek poem that I had remembered writing. Like, I probably wrote it sometime, like, when I was around 10 or so, like, maybe 11. I was 8. No, I actually wasn't 8 when this happened. It was the first Star Trek-related thing that didn't happen
the first thing
when I was 8.
Didn't happen when you were 8.
Yes, but I think I was probably, like, 11 or so. I don't know. But somehow I actually remember the poem, and I don't know why. It's just apparently been stuck in my head for the past 10 years. I don't know. But I've written it down and I just wanted to read it to you because it is so amazing. Alright. I'm assuming this is called Enterprise or something. I don't think it actually has a title. Okay. Through a dangerous sea of not water but stars sails a beautiful ship without limits or bars. Sails a beautiful ship, trusty, steady, and true, through a dangerous sea of black, not of blue. It sails by stars, by planets and suns. It flies through dark places seen by no one. And though it may falter, it never will fall. It will fly forever, for one and for all.